They thought Captain Mitchell was just another forgettable name in the files. Colonel James Bradford certainly did, until she exposed flaws in the very drone system he built to secure his power. They mocked her safety concerns. What they didn't know, she wrote the targeting protocols. Now the courtroom plays his voice, planning her downfall. Stick around. The pilot he tried to bury is about to take him down in flames. Justice is coming, and it wears her wings. Let us know where you're watching from and what time you found this. We read every single comment. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. Colonel James Bradford's fingers traced the edge of Mitchell's personnel file, savoring the pristine crispness of paper that would soon be stained with career-ending remarks. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across his meticulously pressed uniform, each metal catching the glare like weapons in his arsenal. 23 pilots sat rigid in their seats, their collective breath held as he circled his prey. Captain Mitchell. His voice cut through the air with practiced precision. Your recent performance reviews are concerning. He could feel the weight of his command stars pressing against his collar, reminding him of the power they represented. The security camera's red light blinked steadily in the corner. Soon there would be no digital record of this meeting. A phone screen glinted in his peripheral vision. Some fool was recording. Perfect. Let them see authority in action. Bradford's hand found his command coin, the one he'd earned through decades of unwavering control, and rolled it between his fingers. The familiar ritual steadied him as he prepared to demolish another threat to his carefully constructed world. Your qualifications for the Prometheus project are questionable at best. His voice rose theatrically as he slammed the file down, watching Mitchell flinch. 3 incidents of equipment malfunction in 2 months, a pattern of insubordination disguised as safety concerns. The words dripped with contempt. Something in Mitchell's eyes was that defiance made his stomach clench. The coin grew slick in his palm. He leaned closer, invading her space until she could smell his morning coffee. You don't belong in this program, Captain. Not now, not ever. A slight movement caught his attention. Someone in dress blues slipping into the back of the room. General Harrison. What was the Inspector General doing here? Bradford's coin slipped, hitting the floor with a damning ring that echoed through the sudden silence. Courtroom. Colonel Bradford. General Harrison's voice carried the weight of incoming artillery. The IG's office requires your immediate presence regarding Project Ghost Hawk. The blood drained from Bradford's face as whispers rippled through the room. His empire of secrets, built on decades of carefully cultivated influence, suddenly felt as fragile as the paper beneath his trembling hands. Type power falls if you've ever witnessed authority crumble. In the suffocating quiet of his office later that morning, Bradford stared at his reflection in the polished surface of his command coin. 28 years of service of controlling every variable, every person, every outcome. He'd learned from the best. General Maxwell had shown him how to maintain iron control through fear and manipulation. Power isn't given, son, Maxwell had said. It's taken and kept through absolute authority. But something was different now. The trending hashtag, #military_truth, mocked him from his phone screen, accompanied by a video that was already gathering thousands of views. His own voice, distorted by rage, played back his worst moment of weakness. Would his carefully constructed world survive this challenge? Bradford clutched his command coin until its edges bit into his palm, refusing to acknowledge the tremor in his hand or the cold sweat beading on his forehead. One pilot, one insignificant captain, couldn't possibly destroy everything he'd built. Could she? The coin caught the light, and for a moment Bradford saw not his reflection, but the ghost of what he'd become. A commander who'd forgotten the true meaning of leadership. The thought vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by familiar steel resolve. He would maintain control no matter the cost. The question wasn't whether he would survive this challenge. The question was, who would be left standing when the dust settled? Colonel James Bradford traced his finger across the mahogany desk, remembering the weight of his first command insignia. 27 years of service, and now some upstart test pilot threatened everything he'd built. The pendant at his neck, a golden hawk with ruby eyes, the symbol of command at Prometheus Defense, felt unusually heavy tonight. Through the panoramic windows of his executive office, the night training exercises painted streaks of light across the sky. Every jet that screamed past represented millions in contracts, thousands of lives under his control. But something about Mitchell's simulator scores nagged at him. They were too perfect in their imperfection, consistently just above average, never drawing attention. Sopum. Pull up Mitchell's complete flight records. Colonel James Bradford barked into his secure terminal. As the files populated his screen, a pattern emerged that made his blood run cold. The algorithms he'd used to identify exceptional pilots, algorithms he'd helped design, showed microscopic variations in her performance. Too microscopic, too precise. His hands trembled slightly as he opened a encrypted folder titled Project Skyfall, the classified documentation of Prometheus's drone targeting systems. The code signatures matched. Impossible, Colonel James Bradford whispered, but the evidence was undeniable. The pilot he'd been trying to break had written the very protocols he used to train his elite squadrons. The pendant seemed to burn against his chest as memories surfaced. General Harrison's words from 15 years ago, sometimes James maintaining order requires necessary sacrifices. He'd believed it then when they'd first started modifying the drone targeting parameters. A few civilian casualties were acceptable if they meant winning contracts maintaining military superiority. Colonel James Bradford pulled up the surveillance footage from Mitchell's last test flight. He'd watched it dozens of times, searching for proof of incompetence or insubordination. Now, with new eyes, he saw the precise maneuvers, the deliberate exposure of the drone's targeting flaws. She hadn't made a mistake. She'd executed a perfect reveal. "Sir," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "General Harrison is asking about the Mitchell situation. He says the board is getting nervous. Tell him it's handled." Colonel James Bradford responded, his voice steady despite the growing unease in his chest. But as he reached for his command pendant, the ruby eyes seemed to stare back accusingly. How many others had noticed? How many pilots had seen the patterns in the drone programs, but stayed silent, remembering what happened to whistleblowers? A news alert flashed across his screen. A congressional inquiry into defense contracts was gaining momentum. Buried in the article was a phrase that made his spine stiffen. Anonymous sources suggest systematic manipulation of civilian targeting protocols. The night air felt thick as Colonel James Bradford walked to the simulator room. The machines stood silent, their screens reflecting his approaching figure. He ran a diagnostic, something he hadn't done personally in years. The results confirmed his fears. Subtle alterations in the base code, all bearing Mitchell's signature style. She hadn't just found the flaws. She'd documented them methodically, leaving a trail for investigators to follow. Have you ever watched your empire crack, seen the first hairline fractures that spelled doom? Colonel James Bradford whispered to the empty room. Type, cracks spreading, if you've felt your control slipping away. His phone buzzed. Another message from General Harrison. Board meeting tomorrow. Bring full documentation on Mitchell's dismissal. Confirmation required. Colonel James Bradford's fingers hovered over the keyboard. One command could bury Mitchell's records, erase the evidence. But as he reached for the pendant, its weight reminded him of every compromise, every necessary sacrifice that had led to this moment. The simulator screens reflected his face, aged beyond his years. In the distance, another jet screamed through its night training, but now the sound carried a different meaning. Each flight could be carrying another Mitchell, another witness to their carefully constructed lies. "We built this system to maintain control," Colonel James Bradford murmured, remembering the day General Harrison had first approached him about the drone program modifications. "But control is an illusion we sell ourselves to justify the unjustifiable." The pendant caught the moonlight, casting sharp shadows across the simulator controls. Tomorrow he would face the board. Tomorrow he would have to decide between protecting the system he'd helped build and facing the truth Mitchell had exposed. But tonight, in the empty simulator room, Colonel James Bradford finally understood the weight of his command pendant. Not a symbol of authority, but a chain binding him to decades of calculated corruption. And somewhere out there, scoring perfectly imperfect simulator runs, Mitchell was dismantling his empire one flight at a time. Colonel James Bradford watches through his office window as the third patrol of the day circles the base perimeter, their boots kicking up dust that reminds him of aircraft exhaust. His fingers trace the golden wings pinned to his chest, wings that once commanded respect, but now feel like they're burning through his uniform. The base's alert siren pierces the afternoon silence, and his hand instinctively twitches toward the radio before he catches himself. Old habits die hard, even for those who've forgotten their purpose. The security footage from Hangar 7 plays on his monitor for the fourth time today. Mitchell's careful movements around the experimental drone prototype reveal nothing suspicious, yet Bradford's gut twists with certainty. She knows something. The anonymous whistleblower report, bearing striking similarities to her writing style, can't be a coincidence. His empire of carefully crafted influence begins to show hairline cracks. "Sir." Lieutenant Parker appears at his door tablet in hand. "The flight logs you requested." The young officer's hesitation speaks volumes. He's seen the pattern of Bradford's increasing inspections, the targeting of Mitchell's supporters. Bradford dismisses him with a wave, noting how quickly Parker retreats, another ally growing distant. The secure phone in his desk drawer buzzes. "The board is concerned about these allegations, James." Corporate's voice carries an edge he's never heard before. "If Mitchell has evidence." Bradford's reassurances sound hollow even to his own ears. For the first time in 15 years, his superior's confidence wavers. A commotion outside draws his attention. Through the window, he watches Mitchell demonstrating a complex maneuver to a group of junior pilots. Their admiration is obvious even from this distance. The sight of her natural leadership, something he once possessed, sends a surge of bitter rage through his chest. But underneath burns something new fear. His computer chimes with an alert. Someone's accessing archived flight data from the drone program's test phase. His throat tightens as he traces the digital footprint, Mitchell's security credentials searching through dates that coincide perfectly with suspected weapons testing violations. She's not just fishing anymore. She's building a case. Bradford's fingers drum against his desk, a nervous tick he thought he'd abandoned decades ago. The golden wings feel heavier with each passing hour. In the reflection of his darkened monitor, he catches himself touching them, seeking comfort in their familiar contours. But today they offer no solace, offer no. Social media notifications pop up on his phone. Younger officers sharing flight training videos, many featuring Mitchell's techniques. Each post chips away at his authority, rebuilding the community he's worked so hard to control. Wings of Change starts trending locally, and his hands begin to shake. "Colonel," his secretary's voice crackles through the intercom. "General Morrison's office called. They're launching an internal review of all drone program documentation." The words hit like physical blows. Morrison, his longtime ally in the upper ranks, distancing himself before the storm breaks. Bradford opens his desk drawer, pulls out the personnel file he's been building against Mitchell. The fabricated performance reviews the manipulated flight data, the carefully constructed paper trail of incompetence. All of it suddenly seems transparent amateur, his legacy of control unraveling like a cheap uniform. In the growing dusk, he watches Mitchell's final training session of the day. Her students' respect is palpable, genuine. Everything his forced authority isn't. The bass siren sounds again, end-of-day routine, but this time Bradford flinches. The sound carries a different weight, now a countdown to exposure. His phone buzzes again, more leaked documents appearing online. Prometheus lies joins those wings of change in the trending topics. Bradford's carefully constructed world begins to crumble, one damning revelation at a time. The wings on his chest, once a symbol of earned respect, now feel like a brand of shame. Have you ever watched your power slip away moment by moment, unable to stop its descent? Drop one in the comments if you've seen justice catch up to those who abuse their authority. As night falls over the base, Colonel James Bradford stands alone in his office, surrounded by the evidence of his corruption, watching his influence dissolve like contrails in the evening sky. Tomorrow's sunrise will bring more than just another day. It will bring reckoning. Standing in the stark military courtroom, Colonel James Bradford grips the polished eagle insignia that had adorned his uniform for 23 years. The metal feels cold, now stripped of meaning like his career. The harsh fluorescent lights expose every line of defeat etched on his face as he watches the damning evidence scroll across the screens. Doctored performance reports, buried safety violations, the blood money from Prometheus Defense Corporation that had corrupted everything he once stood for. The illegal drone program wasn't just about profit. Colonel James Bradford confesses, his voice hollow in the silent chamber. It was about control, about proving we were better, smarter, more worthy of the sky than pilots like Mitchell. The words taste like ash in his mouth as 2 decades of carefully constructed superiority crumble. His fingers trace the eagle one last time, remembering how he'd polished it obsessively before each inspection, each act of sabotage against Mitchell and the others. The security footage playing behind him shows his younger self tampering with flight logs, doctoring evaluations, all while wearing this same symbol of honor. The dissonance makes him physically ill. The prosecution presents the final piece, surveillance audio of his conversation with Prometheus executives planning to discredit Mitchell after she discovered the drone program's flaws. "We'll bury her so deep she'll never fly again," his recorded voice sneers. Colonel James Bradford watches the jury's faces harden, sees his remaining defenders look away. Type "justice soars." If you believe every pilot deserves fair wings, appears briefly as social media explodes with Bradford falls trending worldwide. Through the courthouse windows, the thunder of jets performing the missing man formation pierces the room. Colonel James Bradford flinches at each pass, knowing they honor the pilots lost to his corruption. His eagle insignia clatters to the floor, the sound echoing like final judgment. "I was wrong," Colonel James Bradford states, shoulders slumping as decades of arrogance finally give way to truth. The sky belongs to anyone brave enough to claim it, regardless of their background. Mitchell proved that. "I betrayed everything the uniform stands for." The verdict is unanimous. As security leads him away, Colonel James Bradford glimpses his eagle insignia being placed in an evidence box marked Military Justice Museum Corruption Case Study. A fitting end, his symbol of power transformed into a warning for future generations. The last image captures Colonel James Bradford in his prison uniform, watching through barred windows as female pilots of all backgrounds soar overhead, their wings catching the sun he'll never touch again. His legacy is sealed not in medals and rank, but as a cautionary tale of power corrupted and justice restored. Share this story to support every pilot's right to fair skies. Drop 2 if you believe talent knows no boundaries.